All of us here at SMT Expo are delighted to bring you a very timely and incredibly important briefing. We are grateful to each of our panelists for agreeing to share their time and insights with us. My name is Stephen Hacker, and I will serve as your host and moderator. Also present are the key members of the SMT Expo team, including Scott Lebwall, who is Executive Vice President, Joe Castillo, who is Vice President of Sales, and Bill McGlade of Victory Productions, our special technical consultant. We've assembled an all-star team of show organizers to share ideas with you about how to create new and innovative revenue streams for show organizers. So why that topic? Because the mothballing of our events, now moving into its second fiscal year, means that to recover swiftly, we need to shore up our weakened balance sheets with new working capital. Simply increasing prices is not an effective solution because exhibitors and attendees' own businesses have also been significantly damaged by the pandemic. We need new ideas to pave the way to a seamless recovery. And we're grateful to our colleagues who are ready and willing to share new ideas with you. Our team this morning includes Greg Topalian, who is CEO of Clarion Events North America. The first time Greg attended a trade show, he was 10 years old, and it was the Boston Seafood Show at the Heinz. Needless to say, he was hooked. The idea of creating epic experiences has always been the most appealing part of the trade show industry, and it is the driving force behind the creation of Left Field Media, which Greg launched in 2014. Greg is now a veteran show organizer with over 20 years of hands-on experience. The International Restaurant Show of New York, which is now part of Clarion Events North America, was Greg's first show. He spent 17 years at Reed Exhibitions, where he was responsible for a portfolio of 38 events, established the one-to-one events group, and led the creation of an enthusiast consumer events business, the fastest growing division within the global company. Greg has consistently created new concepts and challenged the status quo, including being the founder of New York Comic-Con in 2006. Greg comes from a long line of innovators. His father, Harry, was Director of Research and Development at General Foods for 35 years. He helped to create many of the products that we use today, such as stovetop stuffing, Jell-O, shake and bake, and bare naked granola. It's no surprise then that Greg caught the innovation bug. His passions include being an insane New York Yankees fan, thus the connection to Left Field Media. And if that is not enough, he also named his son, Derek, as in Derek Jeter, the Yankees' amazing shortstop and team captain. Joining Greg this morning is Doug Emslie, our good friend in London. Doug serves as Chief Executive Officer of the Tarsus Group. Doug, a proud Scotsman, is based in London, where he has been with Tarsus since its launch in 1998. Prior to that, he held senior management positions at Blenheim Group and after its takeover, United Business Media. Doug holds several impressive past and present exhibition industry leadership roles, including he was the first international board member of the US Industry Trade Association, SISO, the Society of Independent Show Organizers. Doug also serves on its executive committee, and this year is SISO's immediate past chairman. He is a founding member of the Exhibitions and Conferences Alliance. He's a past chairman and remains a director of the Association of Event Organizers, the AEO in Great Britain. And he is past chairman of the Events Industry Alliance. Doug was also a founding member of the International Organizer Network, ION, a joint AEO and SISO group. In his role as CEO of the Tarsus Group, Doug has led the organization's rapid and dramatic growth in several emerging markets, including the Americas, China, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. And batting third in the lineup is Kelly Helfman, who is commercial president with Informa Markets Fashion. Kelly began her career at Advanced Star Communications in 2006, and then the parent company of the largest US fashion trade shows. Magic and Project are iconic events that have become globally renowned for their forward-thinking and innovative management. Now, 15 years later, Kelly is a seasoned trade show executive who is the commercial president of Informa Markets Fashion Division, which includes Project, Magic, and Coterie. Over her 15 years at Advanced Star, which was acquired by UBM and then by Informa, Kelly has contributed and led these major B2B trade shows to be leading events in the fashion industry. Under Kelly's leadership, WWD Magic has been named the top US trade show in both 2018 and 2019, and Magic continues to be named a top 100 event on the TSE Gold Network. Over 17 years of experience in the industry, Kelly was just named one of BizBash's 1,000 most influential event professionals for 2019. So I hope you can see why we say we've assembled an all-star cast to help stimulate your thinking about new revenue sources. One quick housekeeping note: if you'll note the chat icon that appears at the bottom of your Zoom page, we will proceed through the program and monitor that chat line to secure any questions or comments that you might want to offer to the panel. We will try to address each of the questions, but if time does not permit us to do so, we will provide you with the questions and the answers as a blog on the SMT expo website, and that address is smtexpo.com. So let's get started. Panelists, your three organizations recently made industry headlines when you launched a collaboration that brought buyers and sellers to the fashion industry together for the first time in February in Orlando. Tell us what brought you to conclude that the Orlando collaboration would be an innovative show solution in the midst of the COVID pandemic. And would you each comment with your thoughts on the project? Why don't we start with Doug?
Well, the interesting thing is we started off in a different place to where we ended up, which is a familiar story in that I was having a chat with Greg about actually trying to run our events in Las Vegas. And it was quite obvious with the rules in place at that time that we couldn't actually run anything that we would like to run that made any sense. And we had seen at the World Market Center that they had been able to run events because they had a retail exception. And we thought, well, actually, if we could create a retail type environment for our shows, we should be able to get permission. So that's how the conversation started with Greg. We then sort of developed that into, well, maybe we could do this somewhere else. And then I think, Greg, it was your idea. Why don't we get Nancy involved with Magic and see if we can do it all together?
Yeah, and it was, I remember the call very well, that it was like this iteration of what can we do? Like, how do we pull something off? And I think one of the themes here, and having just been at the CISO CEO Summit with all of you guys a couple weeks ago, there's an air of collaboration that I have never experienced in the 20 plus years I've been in this business, right? Generally speaking, we're a collaborative industry, but the fact that quickly we talked about, not competing with each other, but actually going in together, that quickly we went to Informa and Magic and said, would you want to do this with us? And a mere, less than 6 months later, we were running an event. To me, there was two big themes: the collaboration, right, which I still see as strong. Like we're having many conversations that would have been difficult a couple of years ago. And the other, I think, is just our biggest challenge is value, right? That we know we're going to run things that are smaller. We know we may not draw as many people. We've got to deliver high value, right? And what I think worked so well about this is we all three of us delivered better value by doing it together than we would have had we just gone it alone. And I think that's the key thing, right? Just being able to run is one thing. You got to make sure that the buyers that are there, the sellers that are there feel like we got a lot out of this.
Greg, let me ask you this. There's an old saying in the military that there's nothing that builds lifelong close friendships like serving in a foxhole together. And that's kind of where the industry is right now. And it's gratifying to hear that you're detecting a new air of collaboration. Were there any surprises that the two of you observed from the collaboration? Doug, you kind of alluded to it, that it didn't quite turn out the way you envisioned it. Was it good? Was it bad? Or was it mixed? How would you categorize it?
No, I think it was very good in terms of the final outcome. I mean, we ended up with a situation where our customers had a very good experience. We ended up with 50% of the buyers that turned up to the event for us were new. So we got great data. We got great people who we can then actually show the full offering to in August in Las Vegas. But also, and it's important to remember at this time in February, that New York and LA were closed, where the big showrooms are for the fashion guys. They actually couldn't show product to the buyers. So if the buyers wanted to see product, they actually had to come to the show. And what happened within an hour, we had one of our buyers spend over $10 million in the first hour. So that created an instant buzz that actually people were there spending money. So, I mean, I think that was really the important thing. But the other thing which we saw that came through very, very strongly in 2 to 3 weeks afterwards was the fact that we ran this event. We demonstrated that we could run events safely, that actually they were good, and that gave confidence to the market. And as a result, our sales went up dramatically for our August event. So that we showed the industry that we could do this, and there's nothing to substitute people actually seeing it rather than talking about it.
So what are the plans for the future? Another collaboration in the works? Or is that proprietary?
No, I mean, I think we're having ongoing discussions, because every February and every August we're together at the same time in Las Vegas, and it makes sense to continue that collaboration, and we're in dialogue as to what that looks like. But also there are other markets where our customers want to go. And it makes sense, coming back to Greg's point, of it makes sense to go at scale where we can offer the buyers all the different price points, because we're all producing shows to different segments of the market. So whether that's Orlando or other markets, it makes sense. So it's a very active discussion at the moment. That's
really interesting. Greg, do you want to add any comment?
Yeah, I think it was, I would say, largely positive for us. I can't say every customer was thrilled. Some, I think, maybe had unrealistic expectations of scale. To me, probably one of the bigger surprises was, one of the interesting things we did was we did do on-site rapid testing, which was an incredible undertaking. And it was decided and committed to a bit on the later side. And I think it's just, to me, this is the first time we had done that. It was a remarkable undertaking. And I would say it was mixed, right? You know, there were some people I think were tremendously comforted by, wow, this is an incredibly safe environment. And there's no question we actually had some customers not like it and decide to go elsewhere, right? That they didn't want the nuisance, right? So, you know, I think ultimately at the end of the day, it was an incredible industry experiment. You know, I think we did create, you know, a very safe environment. But I will also say it's, you know, practically speaking, you know, not something that I would look at and say, oh, that's the standard now. We should be doing that, you know, as we go forward, especially on shows with even more scale. I think it would be extremely difficult to do.
One of the things that really complicates our lives as show organizers is the fact that we're dealing with numerous different jurisdictions with numerous rules, some of which conflict with each other. It's a recipe for paralysis in planning because you really don't know, do you, whether you can move into a particular market or not until all of those jurisdictions are aligned. Is this perhaps going to stimulate the idea of regionalization? We've talked about it for years and years and years about breaking out 4 different events instead of one mega event. Is that on the horizon now? Is that something that you all think is going to be one of the outcomes?
I don't think it's going to radically change. I mean, I think there always was a demand for a big show where people can actually see the full offering. And then there are regional markets where, you know, the buyers, for whatever reason, are smaller. They don't want to go to the bigger show. They want a slightly different flavor. So I suspect you'll see more people try regional shows, and it will swing back and you'll get probably a happy, you know, bit in the middle where you'll have the bigger shows and you'll have maybe 2 or 3 sensible sized regional shows. But I don't think you'll see a proliferation, but definitely more, but certainly from our perspective on a more measured basis.
Right.
I would agree with that. I think there are regional shows. We have regional shows. Those are likely to recover and come back quicker, right? Just because it's an easier proposition. If you're, you know, we have a portfolio of like gift and souvenir events. I mean, we ran 2 very successful events in November and December, right? So this is well before vaccines were out and rolling in the market. And these are largely drive-ins, right? These are order writing shows. They went very well. I wouldn't say that it's going to change that we want to have more regional. I think it's just the makeup of your events. The thing I'd counter with that though is Freeman has done some incredible market research over the last year around sentiment, confidence and sentiment. And one of the last review I got with them on this, one of the amazing, there's so many really interesting takeaways, but one of the really interesting was that, you know, that why people come to shows is shifting, that connections and that human interaction is becoming the #1 driver, right? As opposed to finding new products. So I'm not sure regional does that as well, right? You know, if you think about regional events, they tend to be a little more basic in their nature. I think what will come back is, you know, shows that have that hook, right? That people feel like, I missed this. I missed the connection of being a part of this market. More than just where is it happening?
Okay. Let's take a step back and move on from your Orlando experience. And when you think about recovery, financial recovery, paint us a picture, if you will, of what you think the typical situation is for most trade show organizers.
Well, I would say at the moment we're in a very interesting situation. I mean, I'm in 19 different markets and they're all behaving differently. But if I look purely at the US, I think the second half of this year is going to be like the wacky races. You've got the markets reopening. You've got 6 months to produce maybe a year's worth of shows. So you're going to see lots of shows, probably a lot smaller, not probably as well attended, but there's going to be a huge amount of activity, and it's going to be, I suspect, a very stressful period in terms of production as people try to get open. So it's going to be a period of getting back and going again. And then I think it's going to take into 22, if not into early 23, before we get a good rhythm again. So I think this is going to take longer, but I suspect that actually it will come back quicker than people think.
Well, as my mother would say, from your lips to God's ears.
Hey,
Greg,
Stephen,
what's your take?
real quick before that, Stephen, we have a question from the audience direct for Doug, based on his response there, if you mind.
Sure.
So based on the 6 months of events that'll have to happen within that year, since exhibitors have a lot of crossover between multiple events, how do you see that affecting the bottom line, the revenue for these organizations, since the exhibitors will most likely want to either take part in one if they can't actually, spend on all of the events?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think our customers, exhibitors, are going to be selective. And I think that's going to be one of the contributing factors to shows being smaller. But also, I think, and going back to our opening topic, it will mean probably more cooperation, because we certainly see from customers that say, well, actually, we like these shows, we do different things. Wouldn't it be great if you guys cooperated and we can get to see two different audiences? So, I mean, Greg, you've seen it in some of your markets, on the gift market. There's going to be different ways of thinking about it, because not only have we got the pressures from our exhibitors and their budgets, but also our biggest challenge is our attendee time. And actually attendees won't be able to go to all of these shows. So they're going to be more selective. And therefore our exhibitors are going to try and work out, well, where am I most likely to meet my customer?
Are there opportunities, albeit limited, are there opportunities to package together events that operate within the same large industry and sell a package both to exhibitors and to attendees? If you two of the three of these events will give you X discount for your participation. Is that feasible?
I'm not sure that would be the way we would go. I really think it's about one of Greg's opening comments about actually giving real value to our customers and getting that return. Because if you think about it, why do you go to a trade show? You go to a trade show if you're an exhibitor because you want to sell something. And if you're an attendee, you want to go and see the market, but actually you probably want to network as well. And the last year has proven something very, very clearly, is that virtual events don't give either. They don't give the sale and they don't give you the networking.
Other than that, they're perfect.
Absolutely. Then they're fantastic and they're worth billions.
I think the hard reality of this situation, if you're being honest with yourself, or one is being honest with themselves, is if you're the leading show, you're going to be fine. If you're the fifth best show in the industry, you're not going to be fine, right? You probably weren't that great before COVID, right? It's going to be really, really hard because, if you're, I could give you any number of examples, within our own portfolio. And Doug, I'm sure you think about it with your own, is, where you're the show that people think, man, I miss it. I want to be back. I want to network with the right people. If it's the show, that's the one that's going to recover quickest, and they're going to make that choice. But buyers might say, I'm going to one where I used to go to 4, 3, right? And that, I think, is going to be the trickiest thing. So, where you're the leader, I think making sure you deliver that value, when you're not the leader, regionality may be your friend, right? That you may not be the best, but you're close, you're local, right? I think that's going to drive some things. And back to the original question though about the recovery, I think Doug's right. I think this year is going to be nuts. I think most of us have less people than we had when we started all of this. And, we're going to be running a lot of shows in a short period of time. So there's going to be, and they're different, they're harder. There's more complex questions being asked about what are the rules, what are the protocols, how are you going to get the buyers there, what's safety, so it's going to be really difficult. I think depending on the show, back to my point about leader, not leader, I think, shows will run down 20%, down 40% as a range, right? Just in terms of where, maybe you get lucky with a few that run, close to where they were, but I don't think that's going to be the standard this year. This is where I think the key when it comes to recovery is, I believe when we get into 22, things will be much closer to normal. You got to have invented some new stuff, right? Like the new revenue, the new digital products, whatever it is, whatever you've got cooking, right? And I've seen some, we've done some cool things. Doug, I know you've done some cool things. I think we're sharing some of it. Is that stuff has to be what makes up for that drop off, right? And, I think the win we're all waiting for is when the live event stuff comes back, let's say it's 22 or 23, you're going to get this 1 + 1 = 3 of you now have a suite of digital products and you have your very powerful live products. But now was the window, right? Like now was the window to invent because you had the time to do it.
Greg, I want to go back to a couple of comments you made early on about value. When we talk about value, it's kind of an all-encompassing, amorphous kind of concept. Can you cite some of the things that you all have done, and Doug, you as well, that you've done in this crazy environment to add value for both exhibitors and attendees? And I understand that some of this may be proprietary, and there haven't been that many real opportunities because there haven't been that many shows. But what's going through your head when you think about value?
Yeah. So, I think the basis of, why do people come, right? And making sure that you're delivering them, a strong value against, their objectives. For us, I think the thing that we've done the best that has been, really eye-opening and I think does deliver huge value for both buyer and seller are connections and meetings, right? Where we're able to, whether it's in a virtual environment or whether it's actually live, that to me, I've always loved that business model. It has always had some flaws when you think about what a hosted buyer event, they don't scale well, they're expensive to run. For me, the game changer for us is what we've been doing around matched meetings in a virtual environment. And the plan is to deliver those in a live environment as well. That's probably the one thing I could talk to that I would say real game changer.
Yeah.
I mean, a number of things, but I mean, just picking up on Greg's point on meetings and creating those one-to-one connections. I mean, we've got a business in the travel sector, and one of the key issues that I'm not sure people are focused on yet is data. And in the travel industry, I mean, I was shocked at the SISO meeting when Roger Dow, the CEO of US Travel, said of all the unemployed people in America, 65% of those come from the travel and hospitality sector. So in that sector, you've got huge data issues because all the people, or 65% of the people on your list, are no longer there. If you draw that analogy across. So what we've been doing is building out data products to help our customers so that actually they begin to know who to talk to, and creating those relationships, then building that out in terms of actually where is the business, and it's rebuilding for the industry and really focusing them in terms of finding their way through, to find the needle in the haystack. And I think it's a rebuilding job in that particular sector. And in another area, and it's something that we've just actually announced today, is that we've done a deal in our aerospace sector with the leading YouTuber. So if we look at how people are consuming media, a lot of it's been done digitally. You look at the amount of Netflix subscriptions that have gone up over this period, people stuck to their screens. And the gentleman we've done the deal with he's got 2.5 million subscribers. So he's got a huge audience. He's got 600,000 people on other social media who follow him. So he's got a lot of following. And what we're able to do there is that we create really valuable content for our audiences, but also we create a business channel where our customers are looking at sponsorship models of how do they get their messages out to a broader audience, some of which will be coming physically to our events and some of which actually they want to talk to on a more regular basis. So it's creating effectively an advertising and sponsorship model that is actually using the massive change in consumption of media.
You just hit on a really keen point, sponsorship. In my thinking, sponsorships represent an infinitely potential source of extraordinary revenue if it is a well-positioned sponsorship. Yet when I speak to a lot of show organizers, small, medium-sized events for the most part, they're still putting together a sponsorship menu and distributing it with blast emails. They don't reach out to discuss their potential sponsors' marketing objectives with respect to attending their shows. They're still in the dark ages. How do we get more show organizers to recognize the incredible potential value of sponsorship revenue?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that surprises me. I mean, we sophisticated sponsorship, cool activations should be objective based, and certainly has been a big part of our playbook for a while. I agree, like cookie cutter kind of platinum gold, that kind of stuff probably doesn't get it done. I mean, I will say just a little bit of a reality check right now. We're finding that it's a little harder right now, that it's one or the other, right? So in 19, I would say, yeah, we were seeing, even on a stable trade show where the exhibition floor wasn't growing a lot, we were getting good growth out of sponsorship because we were being creative in the way we were presenting things. Now we're seeing a little more, I can't do that. We got to watch our money. We got to watch what we're doing. We want to be there, but we're going to be there with the sponsorship, or we're going to be there with the booth. So I think that's going to be a bit of the drop off we see this year, unfortunately. So I don't know if it's Doug, I don't know if you're seeing the same. I don't know if you can really make up ground with that in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, and we're looking at it slightly differently as we get back, because all of our research is telling us that people want more reasons to come to shows. The experience that people are going to get at shows are going to be critical, and we had our last presentation at SISO, and it got summed up with you only get to make an impression once, but actually with what's happened, we're getting a second opportunity to make an impression with our audiences. And therefore, what we've got to do is put on very good experiences. And what we are doing is working through those experiences, those activations, the content that's going to be on the floor, and using the sponsorship model to actually create that environment, rather than saying, well, actually what we're doing is looking to make this, new amount of revenue. What we're doing is using it to make sure that actually we're getting the maximum number of people there to make that impression, so that actually we build in 22, 23.
What is the most innovative revenue generator that you've seen recently, either one of your own events or somebody else's events? Something that really resonated with you. Can you think of one or two?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll share. Harder for me to say what somebody else is doing just because I don't know their numbers, and it may look good, but you don't really know. For us, kind of preparing for this call, there's two things. There's two kind of business models that we're deploying that I think are, well, I know are driving value and are driving really meaningful revenue. It's the meetings piece, right, which I mentioned before. So that is something that I just fundamentally believe in. We did, it's partly driven through an acquisition we made in October of last year for a company called Quartz Events, who have absolutely brilliantly taken hosted buyer events to an online platform, and it's been very, very successful. So that's one. And the second is, I think the virtual side, you're right, Doug, they don't do well on commerce. They don't do well on networking. What they do well is education, right? And where we are a thought leader, where we have brands that are first and foremost about training and education, we've invested in and are launching some products that are Netflix-like in their business model, meaning we want to educate you all year long in a dynamic way, and you're going to pay for it. So those are the two for us that I would say they're the ones that I'd look at and say they're keepers. They're going to be big businesses in 2022, 23, 24, irregardless of what happens to trade shows. They're going to be really meaningful businesses.
Yeah. I mean, just to add to that, I mean, one bit that I found really interesting, we've got a big medical business, and therefore education is an important part of that. And, that model has evolved where the education was delivered at the physical event. And then about 6 years ago, a lot of that content went online. But the model was very much about, pushing out the content when we wanted to do that. And what we've seen very clearly in the last year is there's a huge demand for professionals. I mean, this just happens to be in the medical sphere, but they want more education, but they want the education when they want the education. And therefore, the model of actually delivery is totally different, which actually then moves you into more of a subscription model where people have access to the libraries, but they're paying for that on a monthly basis, and they consume it when they need it, not when we think they need it. And I think that's a big change. And I think it's a general change for our industry in that, we tend to get together and service our industry once a year. And what we're going to see going forward is, it's going to be less about virtual and hybrid. If you stand back and pre-pandemic and said, I'm going to run a virtual event, which is all about content, someone would have said, well, you're running a webinar. And would you have got excited about, having a webinar? Would you put out lots of press releases and say that you're worth billions of dollars? No. And I think what you're going to see is people sort of lose all the buzzwords and get back to actually reality. It's about selling, it's about educating, and it's about connecting. And in servicing that community, you've got to be doing those different things at different points in time. Some of that's delivered, in person. Some of it's going to be delivered digitally. So I think we need to look at it that way around rather than go, well, I'm going to do a hybrid event. Well, first of all, what is a hybrid event? I mean, I don't know what a hybrid event is. And I think we've got lost in the jargon in the last year.
That's a shame. I actually joined this webinar hoping you'd explain it to me, Doug. And, a big loss for me. Look, I think the hybrid stuff is cool in terms of reaching new audiences, right? I think that's an eye opener that, oh, wow. I think we all have experienced with the virtual stuff we've run, we're reaching people that weren't coming to our shows. Very exciting. If we can figure out how to continue to do that, that's a win for the industry. But I'm with you. I feel like the products that are going to sustain and be here with us and actually mean something to our businesses are the ones that are built around some kind of buyer seller need, right? Not replacing something. Because you're right, like the webinar businesses, we've had webinars forever, right? But why were they so much, they weren't attended as well because there was lots of other options, right? So, I think thinking about our products as like a stack of how do I, whatever sector you're in, thinking about, like, I'll give you an example. One of our biggest sectors is in the fire service, right? So we have the biggest trade show in the U.S. for fire departments and firefighters. Great. And it's doing pretty well. It's going to run this August. It's going to run probably as close to any of our events as like its original size. We also happen to have magazines, right? Those are quite helpful during the last year or so. But in this moment, we're deeply committed to training online, right? We're launching a product that is a subscription-based product around training. We're very vested in a product network, which is really based on matching buyer and seller need. So we have found, like, I look at that now as that's a very complete offering to the fire service, right? We educate you with our magazines, right? When you need something, we connect you to what you're looking for. We have the Super Bowl trade show, right? And we also can train you and educate you all year long. That to me is how you win, right? Is having a really deep stack of products and serve a market really well.
Well, once again, said another way, it's all about value, delivering new coveted value for which people are going to pay and participate. Not all of them, but some of them. And that's the other thing that is troubling these days. And it's not directly connected to the pandemic, but we have become cultures that expect instant gratification. No matter what the need is or the want is, there's someplace an Amazon can deliver that to us by 4 o'clock this afternoon. And my concern right now is, as we attempt to return to full-blown face-to-face trade shows, we're going to encounter a number of serious obstacles. For example, Greg, you said you've got a show in August. I don't know who the contractor is, but do they have sufficient staff back in place to be able to provide you with the kind of service we've all come to expect?
Yeah.
I think there are going to be some problems there based on the metrics.
Those are real conversations. In this case, it's the Expo group. They've been great. I think we're going to be good. But it's certainly a conversation I never thought I had to have, right? We didn't have that conversation in the past. Like, are you going to have enough people to pull this off? Like, and now you have to have it. But I think they're as excited, Freeman, Expo, I think they're all going to be as excited for the recovery as possible. Doug, I don't know what you're feeling, but.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's a real point. And, I mean, if we look at the numbers, probably 80% of the contracting personnel, were furloughed or laid off. So it's a massive amount of labor. But that being said, some of that labor will come back, some of it won't, and it will take time, because there's going to be undoubtedly challenges, and we're working through our schedule dealing with this issue, with the Freeman, the GESs, and they're confident they can deliver. GES launched their sort of flexible labor scheme in terms of how they're getting people back. I mean, they're developing plans, but there's going to be pain points undoubtedly with all the big shows. When they're coming all at the same time, they're going to have to be in 5 places at once. So, there are going to be production issues without a doubt. But I think as an industry, we're very good at making it happen. And I think we will make it happen. I think there'll be very few disasters. There'll be lots of stress. I think I'm more worried about my own teams because, in terms of producing, it's going to be very difficult because not only are they dealing with the usual problems of exhibitors and their issues and getting the attendees there, but they're, having to deal with the contractors and making sure that the contractors are producing where normally we wouldn't worry about that.
I think it's a great point about our teams. Like that is something that I spend a lot of time thinking about. How are we appreciative enough? Are we getting them the time off? Are we, I think a reality here is not every industry has been run over by a train, right? In the last year, there are industries that have flourished in this environment, and there's other industries that have had little effect. Clearly, neither could be said for our industry, right? So one of my biggest concerns is I think we've built a terrific team. There's super talented people in this industry. I want to keep them, right? And this is going to be a stressful year. And I don't want them thinking this is a hard industry to be in right now. And, maybe if I worked at, I'm going to just steal it because you said it, things at Amazon are probably pretty good, right? Yeah, I bet they are. So I think that's on us, that we have to figure out how to make sure people are balanced and healthy, not just, safe healthy, but like healthy in terms of getting some time off, getting to recharge the batteries, not just doing 3 straight shows. And we all know how stressful being on site is. So that's a real industry challenge.
Are you concerned at all about those show organizing associations or companies that are now moving into the second year of being shelved, and many of them not having the financial resources, the reserves to sustain 2 years without any trade show revenue? Now, I believe that that's going to kind of hit the fan in the next 3, 4, or 5 months, when the decision has to be made. Do we or don't we go live in 2021, or do we postpone again and risk going out of business? There are going to be bankruptcies. There are going to be distressed acquisitions. How do we focus the industry's attention and the public's attention on the good news side? The events like yours that are coming back and are going to be about the same size as they were before the pandemic. It's going to look like a chaotic free-for-all to people without insight. I'm concerned about that.
Well, I think on the associations, I would say you're right to be concerned, but I think you'll see, and it's been talked about for a long time in our industry, there's been very few actual cases of it in terms of, collaborations with the association than a for-profit. I think you'll see more collaboration, not just because of financial reasons, but because of all the other reasons we've been talking about. The market's changed, technology, what you've got to deliver in terms of content, having the right people. I think associations by their nature are just slow-moving beasts, and that they're going to have to partner. So I think you'll see maybe less bankruptcies than you think, but actually more collaborations.
It will be interesting.
Yeah, I think that's true. And yeah, I certainly feel for anybody that's in a real pinch, right? I've certainly seen some entrepreneurs come up with some very clever ways to, move, keep their revenue and actually ride it out, which is impressive. It won't be everybody. So I think you're right. There probably will be some casualties. I think it does change the dynamic. Look, we have some partnerships with joint ventures with associations that are very rewarding, and it's a different relationship. But the fact is, there's a connectivity to the market that's just better than we can ever create on our own, right? So there's a value there that they bring. And there is, as Doug described, there's a value we bring as well, right? We're doing some really creative things. We're figuring out how to match make. We're figuring out how to be in the digital media business. Those are when you're in 20 markets, you can learn fast. When you're in one single market with one show, it's much harder. So I think you're right in terms of predicting the openness to that conversation.
Hey, Stephen, we have we're at the 9-minute mark right now, and we also have a question from the audience.
Please
This
go ahead.
was in regard to the general service contractors specifically. Do you, as panelists, see examples of or thoughts or ideas of how service contractors might actually support revenue growth via sponsorships or other opportunities for the organizers?
Well, I think in my example that I was giving in terms of building out the experience and seeing the sponsorship really as a way of supporting getting customers back and getting excited, the general contractors are part of that conversation in terms of actually how do we make that exciting, how do we actually get people engaged, and they're very much a partner in terms of the delivery. And I think the general contracting model is probably going to start to change, and you'll get some of them who will just specialize in experience and the delivery of the experience. And then the more commoditized, for want of a better word, services will probably be dealt with by other people. So I think you'll probably see a separation of people doing different things rather than the model that we have today where everything's all bundled together.
Are you saying there will be some level of unbundling those services?
Yeah, I think there will be.
Yeah, I think that's a very prescient observation, because several of the contractors, I believe, have overreached into areas where they really don't have demonstrable expertise, but they're trying to fill a void and become a one-stop operation. That only works if you've got the competence across the board, and I would question that as a business model. But Bill, are there any other questions?
There was one more in regard to what you had mentioned before, Greg, one or the other. So booth or sponsorship. And a lot of times organizers will have the rule that you have to be an exhibitor in order to sponsor. So do you see that shifting, or do you see more sponsorship kind of pavilions coming around to give, a booth that's included in a sponsorship?
Yeah, that's not my position at all. Like, I think that's crazy. And when I first joined the business selling booths, I remember that mentality of like, oh, you sell the booth first. You got to get the booth. Like, they can't do anything else unless they have a booth. I don't agree with that at all. Like, I think you need to talk to a brand about why they're there, what they're trying to do. Someone throwing a massive party, someone being a sponsor of a high-end, high-level conference summit may have as much value, may deliver what they're looking for, and you may make more money doing that than selling them a big booth. So I unfortunately, what I'm seeing is there are some of our bellwether brands are saying, I can't do the 4,000 foot booth and be the title sponsor of the conference track, right? So I'm going to do the booth. But if they said conference track, I'd be completely fine with that.
We've got 5 minutes left. In the time remaining, I'd like to ask each of you to step back for a moment and sort of take on the persona of a world-renowned diagnostician. And your patient is a show organizer today. Knowing what we know, what's your 3-4 step prescription for not just survival but success? What are the elements that really need to be focused upon?
Wow. Doug, you want to start?
Well, I mean, I would say the first thing is really understand the community that you're in and understand their pain points. service those pain points. And I think we've got to move our mentality away from just selling them booths every year. That is the major thing I think actually we have to focus on. And I think as an industry, we spend 90% of our time selling booths and then panicking for the last 10%, making sure that we get enough attendees. And I think we've got to change that.
I think that's entirely true. I think I was going to start with customer centric, right? And I think you just said it in your own way, Doug, right? Which is, I think we need to be closer to our markets than we ever were. The other piece of that to me is being much more open to when we serve customers and with which products, right? So I think there is a better business to be had by not just saying we run events and that's all we do. And honestly, I'll speak for myself. I don't think we would have ever unlocked some of the things we're doing now had it not been for the disaster of 2020, right? But I think having new products now is going to make us a better, more resilient, maybe more valuable company than we were just having our events.
Yeah.
Excellent on both points. I want to thank you both. I also want to take note of the fact that our third presenter, Kelly Healthman, is MIA, somewhere between Zoom and the ozone. And I know she is very disappointed not to have been able to participate, but there'll be another webinar sometime in the future, and she'll be one of the first ones we go to. So,
and Stephen, I know originally we had Nancy Walsh on here, so I just want to share here in my office. She was kind of with us in a way. I actually have her nameplate from Reed Exhibitions. Sits on my desk. So
at the next silent auction for Sphere, I would offer that as an auction item. It's going to bring in hundreds of dollars. Thank you both. We will aggregate the questions and the answers and post them to the SMT Expo blog. Thank you all in the audience for participating. I hope you found it worthwhile. Would invite your comments, whatever they might be. We want to stay as close to our customers as we possibly can. And this is an excellent way to accomplish that. So travel safe, travel well, and we'll see you at a show down the road. Thank you both.
Thanks.